first thing I'd like to ask Paul, so we can be sure to be able to conduct some legitimate business, and that is, would somebody make a motion for us? And would you please just state your name so that we be sure that we get the appropriate people down. If I could have a motion for a quorum.
So moved, Wayne.
Do I have a second?
Second, Bob Snow.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on it? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor of declaring a quorum, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. All right. Let's briefly go through some introductions. I think most of you know the SOB up here at the podium. Stan Bean, your chair for the rest of this fiscal year anyway. And I'd like to introduce to you Jeff Hayes, new executive director, in case you haven't had a chance to be formally introduced. Jeff's been with us just since the 6th of this month.
That's right.
All right. Still trying to get his feet wet. All right, so then why don't we go around? We'll start with the gentleman in the red shirt, you call it. Would you introduce yourself? Tell us where you're from.
You wouldn't get nothing or?
Okay, thank you. Hi, Karen.
Karen Landry, Guilford.
Joe Jasper, Tilton. Doc Andover. Warren Hutchins, Laconia. Bob Snow, Wilderness.
Okay.
Bob Warren, Amberton. Dave Kerr, Barnstead.
Steve Baker, Bristol.
Wayne Crowley, Concord, Ed Reed,
The answer from Laconia.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll take the minutes of September 30 of 2013. I could have a motion for approval.
So
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, did you catch the names, Karen?
Yes, I
Okay, thank you. Any discussion, any observations, anything that needs to be taken care of that you saw? Okay, otherwise, I'll call the question. All in favor of the minutes of September 30th as presented, would you please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Okay. That brings us then to our major topic of the evening on brownfields and our assessment program overview. And we'll call on Jeff to lead us through it. Sure.
Full screen here. So we're just going to give a brief presentation on the Brownfields Assessment Program. As you probably know, Lakes Region Planning Commission received another Brownfield Assessment Grant. This is a $200,000 Brownfield Assessment Grant to do all hazards. They come as petroleum assessment grants and other hazard assessment grants. We have the non-petroleum one. So things like gas station and things like that are going to be aren't going to be eligible for the assessment funding. So, brownfields as a community redevelopment strategy. What is a brownfield? The brownfields are any sort of abandoned property that's not really being used. And it doesn't have to be filled with contamination. It can just there can just be a perception that it's contaminated, and nobody wants to touch it. Nobody wants to go near it because there's thought to be contamination, and it's thought to be very expensive, and nobody wants to inherit that type of liability. The examples of brownfields, you can see. Facts about brownfields is there's many of them throughout the country. Any old industrial area with manufacturing certainly has them, but any gas stations, leaking tanks, all sorts of conditions. And it has a major impact on the community when you redevelop it. It increases local tax base. You take a property that's abandoned with very low assessment, and if you can remove the contamination threat, you can get financing for the property all of a sudden, and go back on the tax roll. Towns have a lot of properties that they have to take for back taxes. A lot of those properties, towns really should not take unless they have an assessment done before taking it. Because if you take a property that has contamination on it, the town inherits some of that liability. So it's best to have an assessment done. Banks now are all having environmental assessments done before they make loans. Job creation and retention, whenever there's new redevelopment, there's going to be job creation. There. Neighborhood revitalization, all the things that it means when you take an abandoned or run down building and you redevelop it. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Pristine areas, green space. You can create you can just clear a lot. That's an eligible end use. You can just clear the lot and make it a park or a green space. Pristine areas. I think that really refers to the idea that a lot of brownfields can, groundwater can get infiltrated and can reach into areas that have been undeveloped before, and those areas can get polluted groundwater and areas and things like that. So you can have an assessment done if you're worried about something leaking onto your property from another property. And it's just, in redevelopment, it's just a better way to go than new development. So it is sort of that, the brownfield, and then the opposite is greenfield, where you can build in a green field that has previously been undeveloped. That's what they call greenfield development. Brownfield development is development on an area that's already been developed. Obstacles, cost of redevelopment. It takes longer to develop a brownfield site. It's more complicated. There's things on the site that you have to deal with. You have to have landowner permission. That's an important part of a brownfield assessment. You might have a property in town that's run down, just love to get it redeveloped, love to get an assessment done on it, but the property owner has to work with you and allow engineers. They have to sign a site access agreement to allow engineers on their property to do an assessment. So you have to work with the landowner, and sometimes that can be a worry for the landowner to have an assessment done on their property. So you have to really work with them on that. But if they do the assessment, especially a new owner, they can have an assessment done and basically show what contamination is on the site, so that they don't have to be liable for that. So if you're interested in, if it's a contaminated property, you're a bona fide prospective purchaser, is what they call it. You can have an agreement with the state that you want to do an assessment of this property as part of buying it, and that way you can get the assessment done. You can basically get it documented what contamination is on the site, so then you won't be liable for cleanup of that contamination on the site. You can't be sued by the state. You enter a covenant not to sue with the state of New Hampshire. And then you can go forward and redevelop the site without that liability. It's a great program for that. It does take, it is more of a complicated redevelopment than some others, so there is some people that aren't, there isn't a whole lot of there's getting to be a lot more familiarity with redevelopment brownfields, but it's been a few years. The law's been in place about 10 years now. It was signed into law under the small business liability limitation statute under George Bush Jr. that signed that into law. It's a way of protecting small business liability, the scenario I just described. So we have this assessment grant program. We have phase 1 and phase 2 assessments, and then remedial action plans is usually how it goes. You usually have phase 1 assessment, and then phase 2 assessment, and then remedial action plan. The phase 1 assessment is basically background research of documents on the site. It's basically, they call it a paper research on the site. You want to just find out what the historical uses were, who the historical owners were, any records about hazardous waste that was used on the site. All that type of information is looked at during the phase 1 assessment. Phase 2 assessment is where they actually take water or soil samples to see the levels of contamination in the water and the soil and other parts of the site. They're much more expensive. A phase 1 assessment you can get down to about $4,000 maybe. Phase 2 assessment can be $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 an hour from there, depending on how complicated the site is. Once you've got as part of this covenant not to sue, liability protection, is you get you do your due diligence, that's the phase 1 and phase 2 assessments, and then you basically agree upon a management of the site going forward. So you know that there's groundwater contamination, and it's basically it's not at a bad, it's at a manageable level, but you might have to have a sampling well ongoing on that site. And you might have to escrow some funds or something like that to pay for the water sampling, the ongoing water sampling. And that's your only obligation is to just kind of monitor what the contamination on the site is doing so it doesn't get a lot worse, for instance. But you're not liable for that because you have this agreement with the state, the covenant not to sue. They just want you're now the steward of the site, and if there's 55-gallon barrels of waste over here, they want to know that you're not allowing children to go play in that area and things like that. You're managing the site correctly based on the conditions on the site. It's basically what a remedial action plan is. And it can discuss ongoing cleanup too. How the site's going to be cleaned up. There is some funding to assist with that phase of the project, which can be very expensive. There's no doubt about it. With a really very contaminated site that you know has huge cleanup costs, I wouldn't necessarily recommend going through this program. But a site that you're not sure of what the contamination is, there is some moderate assistance with cleanup, so it can really be worthwhile moving forward. Here's some of the sources here. There's the Brownfields Revolving Loan Fund. There's 2 or 3 of those in the state at this point. There's a cleanup grant. That's capped at about $200,000 per site, per parcel on a site. So that, if you have real bad contamination, the $200,000 isn't going to go that far. So you got to keep that in mind. But $200,000 also can take a site that isn't so bad, it just has a lot of perceived problems, and put it back on the tax rolls. So, tax abatement program, job training pilots. The job training pilots are a little, if you have you could work with like Lake Region Community College, this might be good, if you had a site, large site that needed a lot of cleanup, a lot of ongoing monitoring, you could work a deal with like a community college and actually get students and others that need to be trained, paid for doing some of the monitoring. So that could be a worthwhile thing. New Hampshire's good. One of the best kept secrets of New Hampshire's Petroleum Reimbursement Fund. There's a small surcharge on the gas tax that creates this reimbursement fund. It's really pretty good. I think there's a $500 deductible on it, something like that. And you know, if you have a leaking oil tank or something like that, fuel oil, motor oil, gasoline, that petroleum fund is available to help with a small deductible pay to clean up your situation, which is pretty great. It's one of the best in the among the states. So that's about it. So on the back table, there was some information, including a site nomination form. And I encourage any of you that know of a site or know somebody that might know of a site to give them one of those site nomination forms. We'll also put them on our website so you can get them there. And really, we need to collect sites, and we need to make them eligible, and we need to work with the property owner to get access to the sites. There's usually a lot of sites. There aren't usually the kind of sites that meet the eligibility requirements and have a property owner that's always willing to work with you on it. So at this stage, we're trying to gather as many site nominations as we can. There was a Brownfields Advisory Committee that worked a year or two ago on a previous award that helped to rank those sites. We'll probably do something similar this time. If we get more sites than we can support, then we'll have to start ranking those sites throughout the region. What's the other? So in the spring, we'll be putting out an RFP, probably in the next couple of months, to hire an engineering firm to assist. I've heard good things about the Prederi Associates, who I guess was the engineering firm last time. But this is federal funds, so we will have to do a full, federal procurement, free and open competition for an engineering firm to work with. And their role is basically to complete the phase 1 and phase 2 assessments, work with the property owner on the remedial action plan. They do a lot of work with people at DES on the sites. Usually a lot of these sites have a long history with DES. You can go on the DES website, they have something called the One-Stop Data Center. It's a very great tool. You can go on there, the DES website, type in the address, basically any property in the site, in the state, and all of the records that the DES has on that property. So any permits that property had to apply for, any violations, mostly violations and permits, and there's other information on the site based on the property. So if you do have a property in your community that you're interested in, you can go on the DES One-Stop Data and type in the address and you can get a lot more information about it. Yes?
On the cleanup grant, mentioning $200,000 per site, can the cleanup be broken down based on more than the $200,000, based on the chemical or combination?
It's $200,000 per site, but you can, if you have a large site facility, you can break that up into multiple sites. There's one way to get more cleanup money into the
I
project.
mean, can you extend this? Basically, you start with one case and then go on to the next part of it, or break it up?
Well, from the assessment stage on, you really have to be thinking about where you have a large project, breaking that up into multiple sites. then each particular parcel could be eligible for the 200,000. And that comes with a 20% match. It can be an in-kind match. It has to be applied for, the cleanup funds, just like the assessment funds. But there is, state of New Hampshire does have some cleanup monies available. So it's, the Regional Planning Commission, I think, can play a really good role in this because, we're not DES, we're not EPA. We're the Regional Planning Commission with the towns being members of our organization. But we can talk to community leaders and property owners about their properties, talk to them about how this program might work for them, it might not work for them. And we're happy to do that. So I think we play a really good role in between the communities and the state and the EPA. We play a very good role in helping to get the resources that people need for communities and people need for cleanup of these sites that, there's something for everybody in this program. It's all about, it's EPA, so it's about protecting the environment and cleaning up blight and health and safety in communities, but it's really about economic development. I told you that it was signed into law under the Small Business Liability Limitation Statute. So it's really a great program for protecting the environment and supporting economic development, just the way the Nature Review Plan Commission to support both of those items. Any other questions, Bob?
Yeah, Jeff, during the phase 2 assessment, an imminent threat is uncovered. What happens then?
An imminent what?
Threat. We're contaminating an aquifer that's being used for drinking water in the surrounding area. It has to be dealt with. Where does the liability for the cleanup fall?
That property owner has entered into the brownfields program with, working towards the covenant not to sue. So they're protected. Their liability is protected because they've done what they call due diligence of buying that new lot. So they are protected.
Who cleans it up?
That's a good question. I think if it's an imminent threat where it's like about to go into a water body or something like that, then like DES, and I'm sure EPA would have emergency powers to go and stop that release from affecting that water body. If it wasn't, they would be hard pressed to do that. But if it was that imminent, if it was that emergency threat, they could do it in an emergency situation. Otherwise, it's really going to be, the liability is going to, is going to look at the. I worked on Superfund sites for Somersworth back when I was going to UNH, and we were looking at the Somersworth landfill. We were going back to World War II, before World War II, looking for old mom and pop gas stations that might have had greasy rags, and those ended up in the landfill. The liability for the environment, environmental contamination is huge. And there's a whole insurance industry now that sells environmental insurance. Because when you go into a site, a redevelopment, a product development project, and you get some nasty detection of contamination on the site, it can turn your economics upside down immediately. The cost of environmental cleanup is huge. One statistic, 1 quart of oil can contaminate 250,000 gallons of water. It's just, the small, it's amazing how much damage a small amount of contamination can do to the earth and water. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. the back table. And the genesis for this was that as we were recognizing that we were going to be getting a new executive director, and that these days that it's more and more incumbent on us to try and make sure that we do the right thing, we noticed that there was no requirement that anybody check who was hired to do the public certified accountant job. In other words, the executive director was pretty much able to go out and get anybody that they wanted. And their executive board felt that perhaps it would be better if there was at least some oversight to that to ensure that we got an appropriate certified public accountant. Been pretty fortunate over the years. We've had a very good firm that has done it. But just to make doubly sure why that was the reason behind our suggesting this change. And it seemed as if the best place to put it was under the general financial procedures, and it was under A and paragraph number 3, and all we did was add a sentence there: after the annual certified examination and audit shall be required, that any contract with a certified public accountant shall be subject to review and approval by the executive board. So are there any questions? Otherwise, I'd like to call for a motion to accept the procedure as proposed.
So moved, Bob Stone.
And do we have a second? I'll second Karen. Okay. Any further discussion? Otherwise, I'll call the question. All in favor of the proposed change to the Lakes Region Planning Commission Financial Procedures Revision, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it, and we appreciate it. Thank you. All right. We have the transportation improvements, the public involvement process, and you should have received a copy of the proposed process, trying to make sure that it is open and as many people as need to can have an opportunity for input. So is there any discussion on that? Any questions that you have that we might hopefully clarify? If not, I'd like to have a motion to accept it as presented.
So moved.
And do I have a second? I guess take one of the two that moved it and call it. They were very close together, and one was just like it. All right. Any further discussion?
Whoever got it last time, whoever got it first last time, the other one.
There you go, that's what we need. All right. Is there any further discussion on the transportation improvements public involvement process as presented? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All of those in favor
Yes.
of the transportation improvements public involvement process as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The ayes have it, so declared. Thank you. Okay, we have other discussion, and part of the idea here was to perhaps give you and Jeff maybe a little opportunity to, if you as commissioners have some things that kind of bugging you in your community, or if there are things that you would like to see us perhaps spend a little more time on or a little less time on, it'd be a good time to let Jeff know that. Perhaps if you have some questions of Jeff, put him on the spot, but he knew that I was going to do that anyway. So let's just spend a few minutes. Anybody like to go ahead? John.
Okay, basically, we need to, our main thing is to find the sites, and their main job is to complete the assessments. So we basically need to go through a process of identifying the sites. We need to make sure that we have access to the sites by working with the property owner. We need to make sure that they're eligible. For instance, someone who created the pollution and contaminated the site, they're not eligible for an assessment grant. If you created the pollution on the site, and you're the one who contaminated the site, you're not going to be eligible for an assessment grant. So we have to go through a process of making sure that the site is eligible, and we have permission to go on the site, and the site is a valuable one for the community. And after we've gone through that process, we hand it over to the engineers who do the technical work.
So you need a lot of help from us commission.
I think so. I think we have a number of, yeah, we absolutely need help from the commissioners, and we'd like to think that we could be of help to the commissioners on the other side, that we can provide this as assistance for the commissioners to bring to their community as a service. We do have, I'm not quite sure, there was a inventory sheet on the back, which was the very latest I could find. There are definitely some sites that have been identified that we couldn't address with the last round of funding. So we have some carryover sites. So I think we'll be in pretty good shape finding sites. We can only do probably, I think the target is something like 4 phase 1s, or 4 phase 1s and 6 phase 2s or something like that. So we're only talking about addressing 10 or 15 sites probably region-wide. That's all the funding we have to address. So I think we're in pretty good shape, but I think it really comes to the commissioners to address to use the funds most wisely to find the largest needs and help us address those. I think that's all about the commission.
Jeff, I just went through the inventory that was handed out actually, and there were 6 communities that are represented. Laconia recommended the most sites. How can we get the other communities to, there are 30 communities that are part of and get them to see the value of this and get them to start, looking for sites that could be candidates?
I think that's a good question. I think the commissioners are the number one answer on that. I mean, the commissioners are appointed by the communities to take that information from the Lakes region back. Certainly, we're here, staff is here to assist you and provide you the information and help you in doing that. I think that's number one. I think particularly talking to towns about their takings, number of takings, when they take property for back taxes. I think the towns really gotta, if they haven't updated their policy on that, they really should and have to, because if towns are taking properties just based on the fact that there's back taxes, they're putting themselves in a very dangerous position liability-wise. So I think there is some of that education that can occur, and some of that information that can get out, and we have a responsibility to do that. But I think also, to be fair, I think just like a lot of the economic activity and industrial activity is concentrated, I think there's going to be a certain amount of expectation that brownfields are just going to be looking at the sites where there's been industrial use primarily in the past, and those can be concentrated in the denser settled areas. So I think I think we need to get the information out there, and we need to provide the opportunity. But at the end of the day, I think getting the the sites that are the most, having the most impact in terms of contamination and in terms of holding back development are the ones that we really focus on. Yes?
Cross-contamination or leaching from another site
Yeah.
into someone's, how is that a,
So, yeah, I mean, that's your, you know, that's your property right not to have somebody else contaminate the property. I mean, that was really the beginning of zoning. Zoning was created as a way of protecting people's property rights. If you have made an investment on property, a pig farm or a hazardous waste dump locates right next to you, that's going to really lower your property values. So that was the beginning of zoning, that whole idea. I think the idea is that with soil and I guess it would mostly be water, you know, it would be most likely water contamination. You know, if somebody has a storage tank, a fuel storage tank, and that's leaking, and that gets in the groundwater, and you're downstream, you're down the plume from there, your groundwater is going to get contaminated too. And if you're worried about that, you can have an assessment done. You can have an assessment done, and you can see if your groundwater, I mean, if there's a really likelihood that you know, DES agrees that there's a good likelihood that your contamination could be your groundwater could be getting contaminated, then it's 100% paid assessment that I'll provide for to do groundwater testing. Determine whether there's contamination.
most of this, as you look at petroleum, seems to be the biggest one, of course, contamination, but as asbestos falls into, again, this area, especially for heating purposes, I remember Portsmouth, that was what, because of Pease Air Force Base was a lot of asbestos used even after it opened the base, but buildings that they built or even renovated themselves, there was a lot of asbestos that was, for heating around heating dumps.
Yeah, they call it when it gets fried, I think the term is friable, when it basically when you touch it, it turns to dust.
Right.
It's a serious issue to eliminate it.
The siding too, I mean, there was a lot of homes built with asbestos siding, which
Yes. There is.
if you're around Lrpc and there's boathouses built with asbestos siding.
Right. Right, I don't know, yeah. I'm not sure if that reaches off the siding, probably to some degree, but I'm not sure.
Right.
Yeah, to see if it generates any other questions. Do you have any things that you care to share with us now about kind of what you see as the future in this long time that you've been aboard now?
Well, I don't know. I love this idea of finding a balance between environmental quality and economic opportunity. I think I really like the idea that the region is has the lakes as it's uniting the whole region, and as we talked about with the Port of Oil, somebody can pollute a lake over here and it affects everybody. So I think it makes sense for the Regional Planning Commission to be focused on that. And I think economic opportunity, I definitely see, it's mostly a tourism economy. I grew up in the Washington Valley. I'm very familiar with the tourism economy and the service sector jobs that they created. I think this region has some really great assets and some really great people as assets too that I think could probably be tapped into better to find more opportunity for the region. I think I don't know. There's just so much to say, so much to do. There's just a lot of opportunity in the region. I think to work together and to work and to create things. I think there's a lot of opportunities in this region that can be taken advantage of and move forward. And I think that has a lot to do with the beauty of the area, the assets in the area, the wealth in the area. I think there's a lot of opportunities for the region to work more cohesively together. I don't want to get too specific because I am just like 2 or 3 weeks in the job, but I think I'm looking forward to doing some really interesting projects. I don't have anything specific to announce right now. I think just an idea that I was talking in the office today. We're working on this Granite State Futures, the regional plan. This is where we're mandated by state statute to create a regional plan, and we were able to get the other RPCs get some federal funding to assist us in doing this regional plan. We're mandated to do with state law. We talked about the implementation strategy at a recent meeting, and I think everyone was agreeing we really want the implementation of this plan to be fairly meaty. And I think it would make sense to maybe create a regional capital improvements plan where we could take the CIPs from individual communities and we can aggregate them together into a regional document. And we also have transportation projects and other projects that we can add into that. And I think that at the end of the day, that's going to create a very tangible report on the investment needs of the region, be it water and sewer, roads, other infrastructure investments in the region. I think I'm looking forward to that.
Any comments, input, anybody else?
We talked about municipal purchasing opportunities in the future because of town budgets that are headed to the basement in a lot of places, whether or not they're going to even survive. Smaller and smaller communities are reaching out for anything to walk through the door. They know that, we're helping catching taxes at one end, the other, they won't help you operate. I know in Bristol we're going through, what do we do about a particular engine replacement? We put it off for now going on 4 years, and the next thing that's going to happen is just going to fall apart on the highway when it's going to a fire. Multiple purchasing opportunities out there. Everybody's got the best of the best, fire engine, but not all of us can afford even halfway up that ladder of need there. And I think in itself, when you say multiple means of getting people together for ideas of purchasing. I did that in the medical field, covering the whole state of Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and northern Mass to do joint purchasing. And that was the only way some of these hospitals survived. Like up in Colebrook and Berlin and that area, they had to. And I think we're facing that now again in our municipality purchasing as well.
Yeah, I agree. That's something that we have to, that we have to look into. I think we need to. I think we do need to think about, local service and contracts with local communities and replacing some of those dollars with local dollars. I think regional. Communities are doing that all over the place already. There's mutual aid agreements that are going on. School districts. It makes a lot of sense, and it makes sense to do more of it. I was talking to a community that purchases its health insurance the other day and saves money for the community on purchasing multiple communities bidding out health insurance. I know National Region does it with electricity, where they're saving about $250,000 a year for their communities, and by putting out a proposal to provide electricity for multiple towns at one time. Salt, New Hampshire DOT, you can buy salt through a consortium or through New Hampshire DOT to get a better price on that. school districts, I mean, there's a huge need, and I'm not sure, I think we need to look more into those individual opportunities, and I think it would be really great to hear from commissioners on things that their community is interested in doing with other communities. But I think I would like to do more investigation on that, and not just a meeting or two, but really think about how we can really change our model a little bit, or expand our model a little bit. Household hazardous waste program is a wonderful example of how this commission, Lakes Region Commission, does just that. I mean, it costs communities at least twice as much. When I went to Guilford the other night for the budget hearing, we talked about the household hazardous waste and what a bargain it is for the community. Public Works Director got up and talked about how it costs the community twice as much to do their household hazardous waste. We take 20,000 pounds of hazardous waste out of the environment every year. I talked to you about 1 quart of oil, 4 million gallons. We take 20,000 pounds of hazardous materials out of the system every year. I mean, that's tremendous. 24 of the 30 communities participate in that waste collection. So absolutely, it's a great model. It's kind of sort of a council of government model where I think it's a great model that we need to do more with.
Okay, any other input? Yes.
Steve kind of triggered it. Yeah, he kind of started it. Bryce has been involved for a number of years in trying to see what we can do for combining services. We're finding another town that will work with us, or sheriff's office. And we do work with towns the southwest, which all have to be outside the planning commission. We have an association.
Well, that's okay too.
Well, and we did do a joint purchase of health insurance, which saved our town about $30,000 a year.
Maybe you were talking about
When we initially did it. The real killer for our town, and probably just about every other one, is chiefs.
the precincts.
Each one is going to chew up, a full-time chief is going to chew up $100,000 at least. And there are an awful lot of them, and the firefighters, the rescue people, the cops on patrol are all going to studies or conversations going to show people. The idea that people think they have control over their local fire and police departments is maybe not as true as people think it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of us are volunteer and it's tough. I mean, they have to, those volunteers have to be motivated, and it's a tough balance to have. We know you're all volunteer, but we're not going to get you to that new truck or whatever. It's tough. I understand it, but I agree with you. I think it's water districts, for the other hand, trying to see if water districts can work together better. Certainly, state DES has been promoting that for years and years. There's huge savings in this game, but it's a cultural change. We're a special part of the country here. Everywhere else is ruled by counties. We got those 234 fiercely independent towns that just are part of our culture. I think we have to find ways to maintain that local control, but have regional approaches to save money. That's just like balancing the economy and the environment. You can easily have them butting heads, but the challenge is getting them to work together. That's what we're trying to do. But I don't have a good solution for the chiefs.
We've got technology for heat. We have a good resource for heat.
success.
I grow the quality and the other markets for that are a long way away. Our opportunity with today, almost all of the product of the transported wherever it goes. It could be made in California here. Pellet heat technology today is as good as any other fuel. You could have a tank go up to your house, and pump pellets into your file, and so automatically from the file right into the furnace. For any size, this complex right here. It's a thermal conversion of energy from wood is very efficient versus making electricity, which we do a lot of in the state. It is not heavily subsidized. And there are grants and subsidies available for anybody who wants to put in that kind of new technology.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of work on that. I don't know if we can, regional energy plan is something that when I was working in the North Country, I was trying to work on a regional energy plan. I think it's something we should consider in the lakes. I think there's huge savings that you get. 50% of your energy cost is just the transmission cost to your 50% is the energy cost and 50% is the transmission cost. And so on-site energy can make a lot of sense in some circumstances when you can not only, it's about 30% of when you're heating, you're only capturing about 30%. Or no, when you're creating electricity, by burning, you're only capturing about 30% of the energy. But if you capture that heat, get up to 80 or 90% efficiency. And when you're talking about on-site situations, the heat can't be transferred for long distances, but the heat can be used on-site. So there's some really, there's huge potential there. I'm kind of, I think pellets are huge and there's huge benefits to them. I think wood chips and cord wood still are respectable heating sources. But if we can import substitute, there was a recent report, I'm not going to be able to quote it, but if we can just every dollar that when we use heat from chips and other things, where that's a dollar that's not going to Saudi Arabia, it's staying, it's multiplying in the community. So there's a lot of advantages to thinking about wood heat, wood energy in general. There's a lot of waste. There's a lot of wasted wood. The Forest Society and groups like that, have identified huge amounts of wasted wood that can be used for energy. These older biomass plants aren't very efficient and they're big subsidies, but the newer ones are a lot more efficient. And then on the individual level that you were talking about, you're right, there's a lot of grant opportunities to make people work for. And I think I don't think Lakes Region Planning Commission is doing a lot with energy now, but I think it's something that's definitely one of those areas that I think could grow for sure.
Okay, well, is there anything else that does the cause? Okay.
I think we're seeing a resurgence of small farms in the area. And I don't think that's an area where the planning commission is really been involved. But you are looking at something that's regional. And there are diverse groups that are working in that area. And to the extent that we can make it easier to meet the farm to school, farm to table, that to the extent that could be facilitated, it would be a benefit for you. Providing jobs, you'd be open space.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, agricultural development. I think it's a lot of land trusts are using that as We only grow something like 6% or even less, 4 to 6% of our food in New Hampshire. I mean, it's obviously, we talk about import substitution, talk about, one of the statistics that blew me away on that is when we're talking about, in terms of terrorism response and all hazards and things like that, the average grocery store only has about 3 days of food, stock. So if the trucks, if the 18-wheelers aren't always coming, keeping that thing full. If we really had a disaster and that was interrupted, transportation was interrupted, those food stores would start being empty within 3 days. So, there's huge open space benefits, there's huge community development benefits, and this huge strategy, disaster strategy benefits, but we're thinking about being more, this idea of being more resilient and adaptive. I think agricultural development is part of that, so I agree. In local zoning, we have the agricultural zone is kind of the catch-all zone. We have these zoning districts, and you have the agricultural zone, and it's like anything can go in an agricultural zone. So it's I think it's an afterthought many times that I think we need to think about more, and utilize more.
Okay, anything else for the good of the cause? Mark?
Could I brief the group on the pending legislation?
Well, I guess. Don't want that anymore.
Warren's going to speak on HB 1573, which was the bill to eliminate regional planning.
This bill was introduced a few months ago by freshman legislator Jane Cormier, who represents the Alton, Barnstead, Gilmington area. It's very similar to a bill that was introduced exactly 2 years ago. There were two parts to her bill. The first part was to eliminate regional planning commissions. In the current regulations, all towns, our 234 towns, do not have to belong to a regional planning commission now. They can decide for themselves whether they want to belong or not. So her bill to eliminate them is really a taking of the rights of municipalities to join together in regional planning commissions. 2 years ago, that part of the bill was proposed. It went to the House Municipal and County Government Committee. I went down at that time also to testify, and the committee voted it. Their jargon is ITL, it means no. And then it went on to the House floor and to the consent calendar. This year, the second part of this new bill would be that all planning board members had to be elected by general election. Now, of the 234 communities in the state, all but 13 have that right now. They can decide at their town meetings whether they want to elect or appoint their planning board members. And so for both reasons, this bill is redundant, and the current allows for it now. And if it was required, it in essence is taking away the right of the community to decide for themselves how they want to staff the planning board. We went down on the 16th of January for the hearing, and in the executive board meeting of the Planning Commission, by unanimous vote, we wrote a letter to the committee requesting them to ITL or cause this bill to fail. And I went down to testify on behalf of the committee, of the executive committee, which represents the 30 towns. Also in Laconia, the planning board, there was a unanimous vote, and I represented them also, both by letter and in testimony, that we in the planning board of Laconia did not want this to pass for those two reasons. The planning commissions, each town decides, does it bring value? If it brings value greater than their dues dollars they join. So this bill would take away rights, not solidify them. So we testified on the 16th, and then on the 23rd, just last Thursday, this committee, which is under a different leadership now. 2 years ago, it was under a Republican speaker. This time it's under a Democratic House, and so they have different committee appointees and different chairmen. And in this committee, also similar to 2 years ago, there was a unanimous vote to say no to this bill. It's totally unneeded. What's different this time is last time they put it on the consent calendar. And the consent calendar, because all bills have to be cleared by the House itself. No committee can stop it until it gets to the floor of the House itself. Under the consent calendar, it's similar to the trash bucket on your computer. You lump everything in there, then by one voice vote, out it goes. This time it's interesting. The committee did not do that. And so that this bill will be coming before the full floor for either, under their rules, either a simple voice vote or if it's requested a roll call vote. And it may very well, it'd be interesting because it may very well be that the leadership is tired of these bills that are not thought out, that they don't understand current law, and that have been ITL'd by committees, and they may want a roll call vote so that those that support this bill will be on the record. This will be an interesting thing. But in both cases, it's in the sources that I've talked to, it's very rare for the full House to override a unanimous committee vote. So stay tuned. But I did want you to know where that stood. Thank you. Any questions about it? And I do thank the executive committee of the Planning Commission for stepping forward and wanting this bill to ITO and are willing to go to the step of writing. And then Bob Snelling was down there with me, and Jeff Hayes was down there also, listening to 3.5 hours worth of testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anything else? If not, I am considering adjournment. Is there anybody that doesn't want to adjourn? All right, I'll declare the meeting adjourned then. Thank you for coming.
We're presented now, we're going to have to go back.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
But it's a ballpark.
You never know, it all depends upon the leadership puts it on their schedule. But I think it's just trying to think through, why would they want to sweep it out? Rachel Ryan, or why do they want to do this way? And now it could move from the realms of doing what's right for the state and politically right.
You know, when we sat last week, we discussed doing the state like this. We need something for our master mitigation.
Well, I just listen. You have to know people either